traditional views of the church's take on governance.
The Byzantine Empire was a theocracy.
Yeah, well, yeah, pretty much. What's interesting is that there are spheres, right? So you have basically, if you think about the Byzantine double-headed eagle, that symbol is one body of the people, but church and state as two.
That's a Freemason symbol. That's the Masons was running the Byzantine Empire.
Separate heads. So there's spheres of authority, but one body that they share, which is the people. So, and then the West, to a degree, had this until the Middle Ages when you get sort of a rise of the 11th.
No, this is something people don't understand. You guys are right in the comments. And I do mention like Kabbalism. It does come up eventually in the interview, but Protestantism is Judaized. Absolutely. I mean, that's the Protestant reformers were even accused by a lot of their Catholic opponents. For example, when Luther is debating John Eck, Eck says, "You're Judaizing." Even though Luther didn't like Judaism, it's Judaizing in the sense that you have a tremendous impact of Judaic and Kabbalistic theology during the time of the Reformation. This is an academic publication that Anthony Westgate put out. This is the Hegel and Hermeticism, Hermetic tradition thing that I put up. Occult Renaissance Church of Rome. Hoffman is another good text on this. Jewish Influence in Christian Reform Movements is another academic book on this. So this is not really debatable or either, but Protestants, they don't get nuances. This is like, it's either black and white. I don't care about your nuances.
Century papacy, which becomes also the state. So you get a papal states and a sort of under Pope Dictatus Papae is the famous document that says the church is also a state now. But until that time, the norm was church and states were working in unison. Symphonia is what it's called in the Greek. So that's what I had to grapple with. But Calvinism really doesn't see it that way. It's more like it favors republicanism. There were famous battles between, in England, for example, the Presbyterians and the monarchists. So they actually had a huge fight within the history of the English Reformation as to whether they would be Anglican sort of monarchists or whether they would be Presbyterian Republican Calvinists. So that was a famous Reformation battle. But long story short, again, Calvinism, I think, is just, it's antithetical to the first 1,000 years of Christianity, not so much because of those aesthetic or cultural issues. It's also Christologically errant in that the whole idea of what salvation is ultimately one's legal standing in terms of what's called justification by faith alone or penal substitutionary atonement. This idea that you're justified by God.
No wonder the Protestants are getting mad. I don't even remember talking about all this. I was just like, I remember taking my methylene blue and I took a NAD. And so I just like machine gunned all of this out with 5 hours of sleep. And then looking back, I'm like, okay, no wonder that we're only 15 minutes in and we're just like literally going after the heart of Protestantism.
A sort of notional acceptance of a set of ideas, and then God's attitude towards you changes. So it's dispositional, but it's not focused on an actual ontological change in the person. Orthodox theology is very different. God's disposition is based not on purely legal stance, but on your actual ontological change. So a metaphysical change in you versus a dispositional attitude. So maybe we don't get too heavy in the philosophy, but
I do want to. What's the difference between the two?
Basically, there's an idea in the Middle Ages called nominalism. Have you heard of that?
Yes.
Okay, so nominalism is the idea that there are only names to things, not essences. So there's no human nature.
So again, when you're doing a 2-hour podcast, the biggest podcast in the world next to Joe Rogan, you're going to make generalized statements. It's literally impossible to do this kind of a conversation without general statements. And the amazing level of gagatry on X in the last 2 days is kind of blowing my mind. And I'm realizing that Protestantism's main failure isn't all of this academic stuff. They're just a bunch of gagots. Like that's the being fake and gay is the main problem with these people. And they also feel very inferior. They feel very insecure about the positions, which is why none of them will actually come and defend or debate them. But I'm going to show you guys the book because I have it right there, and I'll show you where I'm getting this idea. Nominalism wasn't a thing in the ancient and medieval world, and I actually say this in the talk, right? So how is nominalism going to, how would you have justification by faith alone as a purely legal standing in the ancient medieval world when the ancient medieval world literally never divorced word from essence? It's not possible. They didn't have the framework philosophically, the toolkit to make that the case. Thus, justification by faith alone it's just philosophically impossible in the ancient medieval world. And it's not even, there's Justitia Dei by Alistair McGrath, famous Protestant scholar who's already admitted, in his book as an Anglican, nobody taught sola fide as this purely legal position until Luther. So again, it's not, it's, you got an top Anglican scholar, you got top Lutheran scholar with Heiko Oberman. But these people don't even know this. Like, they have no idea what history of medieval philosophy is. They don't know, like, Protestants have no idea what metaphysics even is. These people are just out to lunch on all this stuff. But they're very quick to, hyperfixate on generalizations like a freaking libtard. That's exactly what libs do.
There's no dog nature. When we talk about natures or classes or sets of things, we're not giving an ontological metaphysical status. We're just simply classing things together linguistically in a set. The Middle Ages in the ancient world, the time of Paul or the church fathers, they thought very differently. They thought that things have natures, they have essences. And so the words aren't just terms or nominal nameism. They actually describe what's really there in them metaphysically. Okay. So there is human nature. And in Orthodox theology, Christ assumes.
Who would deny that?
In the Middle Ages, it begins with people like William of Ockham. So Ockham is the first nominalist. And
well, none of this is controversial. So again, I'll show you guys what I'm talking about. So this is a famous book called Harvest of Medieval Theology, Gabriel Bile and Late Medieval Nominalism by Heiko Oberman. Oh, look at that. See, there's the proof with the stickies. I actually read this book. And I wrote some articles on this book too, by the way. If you go back to my website, I don't know, 10 years ago, I wrote some interesting, I think, articles on that book. And then I have Eustacia Dyer in here somewhere. But again, like, it's weird to me too. Something that you'll notice when you do these sorts of podcasts like this is things that you think are kind of givens, things that you're not even aware of as being controversial. Those are the things people will hyperfixate on, and then the things that you think people are going to be talking about are not. Like, I did that Kat Von D interview, and like all these comments are talking about my socks, and I'm like, y'all didn't listen to the interview? You just want to talk about my grandpa's socks? So people will fixate on the silliest stuff. Where is that book at? I know it's around here somewhere. Anyway, so, but I mean, the main book that I'm taught that's relevant for this is, I mean, he's arguing that really Luther could only have this positional sort of legal standing idea what justification is when you have the severance of the term or the name from the reality. So the question is, well, how could we be made righteous in God's sight if we're actually still filthy rags, right? In the Luther conception. Well, nominalism provides that, because Luther says, well, God decides and declares it to be whatever it is. So even if you're righteous, if you're wicked, if you're filthy rags, and God just declares you as righteous, then you are that, regardless of what you metaphysically actually are, if you're wicked. So that's why nominalism is the presupposition for Protestant justification by faith alone. Okay. It's not saying that Luther had a nominalist view of every single thing. It's not saying that Luther literally created trans people. I mean, this is so insane. It's like people didn't even listen to what I said. There's a long trek of ideology from nominalism to the point where people are saying, postmodernism, right? It's just all created narratives, and you make up your reality anyway, so you can make it whatever you want.
The razor.
Exactly, he's known for that. And he challenges some kind of established ideas of like it's called essentialism, that things have essences. And so he also goes up against this idea of universals, that there's no such thing as a universal class or essence of a thing.
None of that's even controversial. So people are like losing their mind over me talking about nominalism, and literally nothing I said is even controversial.
And that had been kind of the norm since Plato and Aristotle as well. But so you get a denial of essentialism and essences, and then you get another guy named Gabriel Bile, and he's very influential on Martin Luther. And so when the Reformation kicks off, there's just
yeah, see, nobody even talked about that. I literally named the names. Nobody even talked about this. Luther is not a nominalist. Yes, he is.
About how could you be called righteous if you're not in fact righteous? So if as a human being you are, menstrual rags, as Isaiah says, as the Reformer said, then how could God call you righteous without being a liar? Well, enter in nominalism, and nominalism is able to say, because things don't actually have essences, they just have names. And so if God calls you that, you are that legally, even though in actual fact you're wicked. So and Luther was very happy to utilize that nominalistic approach. And by the way, this is not just my theory. This is famous Lutheran scholars. There's a book called Harvest of Medieval Theology by Heiko Oberman. And the whole thesis of that book by Lutheran is that Luther had to use nominalism. So we're also though moving away not just from theological squabbles, but the idea that things have natures. And this is how we get to David Hume and Kant and these Enlightenment figures, which give us the scientific revolution supposedly. This is how we get to there's no male and female. So you can see kind of the logical train here. If things don't have essences, well then they don't.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm actually correct about this. All of these people on Twitter are losing their mind over this. And it's all it is all of these people wanting to give this impression that they're like really intellectually sophisticated. Excuse me, there is no direct train of ideas from the Middle Ages until today because ideas do not have consequence. No, there are ideological trains and chains of causation, but from one bad idea to the next. And to me, it's bizarre that people don't think that, or like they wouldn't know that. So you don't think there's any connection between one idea and a related idea going even further? That seems kind of obvious to me, but
I actually have genders, right? Objectively, because everything's just a name. So I can just name myself he, him, hers.
Yeah, I think this is actually hits at the root of the problem of Protestantism. That's why they're so mad, is that yeah, no, you actually do have a role in the rise of postmodernism and the idea that reality and meaning are social constructs, because you literally started your whole theology and your pivot away from classical Christianity on this idea that nothing has an essence, nothing has a real ontological status other than the name that you give it. That is what Gabriel Bile's ideas gave to Martin Luther. So, by the way, you notice I actually cited the text. Not a single person that's whining and bitching even referenced the book or even referenced the idea.
Right? I'm not trying to go too fast or too far in the sense of like theology, but I'm saying there is an ideological sort of progression that you can get from nominalism to where we are now with postmodernism, and then with essentially.
It's interesting that an adult could believe in something like that. I mean, having lived your life, known people, known animals, seen nature, and arrive at the conclusion that nothing has an essence, everything is just what we call it. Like that flies in the face of your experience. It has to, right?
What's that saying that you have to be an academic to be really stupid?
Yeah,
right?
I guess that's right.
Yeah. To be indoctrinated into believing some sort. I remember Terence McKenna. Do you remember the psychonaut Terence McKenna? I remember reading it one time, and he said something like,
here. People were
"This is all just magical thinking."
And I like literally Terence McKenna's idea of magical thinking. He says you create reality with your mind, and that this is the inheritance of the post Enlightenment world or whatever. That's exactly what is the point here. So I was making a joke about Terence McKenna. And all of these people are like, look at the schizo. He goes from Martin Luther to Terence McKenna. He's a schizo. Again, this is all in the academic literature, which none of these people actually read. So Eustacia Day, famous book. Alistair McGrath, very famous Anglican, teaches at Oxford, wrote the book, Justification, the history of this doctrine. And he comes to the conclusion that nobody in the first 1,000 years of Christianity or first 1,500 years could have taught justification by faith alone. It's a made-up doctrine. So you've got two great Protestant books, Harvest of Medieval Theology by Heiko Oberman and Eustacia Day by Alistair McGrath. Oh, no wonder the Protestants are mad.